Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Well, hello and welcome back to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who've made amazing career changes. This will inspire you if you want to take control of your career and find your true passion and direction as well. Now, today I'm so lucky to have amazing Robyn Hawke, who's a qualified interior designer who took the plunge into this career path at the grand old age of 43 by resigning from her position of a high school teacher and enrolling in a 3-year full-time design course to retrain at the same time as juggling the demands of a family. So if any of you think that you're too old to make a change, you're not, all right? Now, at that time, Robyn had a 6-year-old, a 15-year-old who's severely disabled, and a spouse who travelled extensively overseas for work. Despite those trials and tribulations of her personal situation, she knew from day one of the course that she'd made the right decision. Robyn set up Inspired Spaces in 2005 and services several target markets: residential, small-medium businesses, and property development with developers. She believes that a physical space has an enormous impact on your ability to learn, to work, relax, and enjoy life, and that her role as a designer is to interpret your needs, decipher your likes, and create a space that is both functional and aesthetically pleasing. She believes interior design should reflect the personality, brand, life experiences, and ethos of the company or homeowner, and her mantra has become, interior design is a necessity, not a luxury. And I 100% agree with that, and that's why we've got Robyn Hawke on the show today. So let's give a big welcome to Robyn.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jane. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited to find out more about what you do and also how you got to where you are today. And we were having a chat before we actually started this interview, and it was so interesting because we both obviously got a love of interior design. You're the expert. I like to be the end user. And it was just a lot of fun finding out all about kitchens and lights and all sorts of things. So how about, Robyn, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about your early days and what were your initial career aspirations when you were, say, in your teens or early 20s?
Well, to begin with, I suppose I'd better start off by saying I was a very, very shy teenager who lacked confidence. So even though I had the ability in design and textiles and all that, I just didn't trust myself or didn't believe in myself enough. And I think that was just to do with being so shy. And in fact, today I'm still shy, but I work at it very, very hard, and most people would just sort of laugh if I said to them I'm a shy person, because now I'll strike up conversations with people anywhere, but it still is an effort for me to be able to do that. So it's an innate thing I think you're born with. So when I was at school, I really did want to do fashion design, though ironically I also was interested in accountancy and travel. So as you do, you go through high school, you do your HSC, and I won 2 scholarships to do teaching. And again, because I didn't really have the confidence to break out and didn't trust my own ability, I did it and took up the scholarships. And especially back at those times, if you get a scholarship, you were laughing. And to actually get 2 was even, more amazing. So off I go to teachers training, a 4-year degree, did a Bachelor of Education. And during that time, I sort of realised I really wasn't in love with teaching. But back in those days, it's sort of like if you started something, you finished it. You didn't go around changing or starting and stopping and starting. Whereas now, if you say to my daughter says, if she said to me she didn't like her uni course, I'd actually say to her, change your course. But back then it was like, well, you just didn't do that. You just continued on. So I did my 4-year degree, did my teaching, did it a couple of different schools, really easy school in a high income area to the total opposite where there was very difficult. Money wasn't available. It was a hard end school. Did all that. And then I had my first daughter, Nicola. She is severely disabled. So at this particular time, I actually resigned from teaching. I had no intention of ever going back. And in fact, even before she was born, I had no intention of going back to teaching. But when she was born, we found that every waking hour of her day had to be done with some sort of treatment. So you had to do some sort of therapy. We had to be working with her constantly every single day, every waking hour. In fact, waking her every 2 hours to feed because her heart couldn't cope with feeding, etc. So as a break, I went back to teaching 1 day a week. Then 1 day became 2, 2 became 3, 3 became 4, 4 became 5. Next thing I know, I'm working back full time, running a department, doing all these things and stay. So then it became a bit more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because of her disability, what do I do with her in the school holidays? So the school holidays were an advantage because she just couldn't go to holiday school camps or anything like that. It just wasn't anything available for her. So we continued on. And in that meantime, my husband's career was taking off, and it was never a thing that it was male or female. It just happened that he earned a lot more money than I did, and her medical needs were so high that we went, well, okay, it has to be with him. I can't do anything else about it. So that went on. 9 years later, we had our second child. And again, sort of going along, stayed with teaching. Of course, it was easy. You still had a mortgage to repay. You still had everyday things to do, so you just keep doing that. And then it came to a head when my youngest daughter was 6 years of age. And at that time, my husband had been away overseas for work more than he was home. My daughter had been in and out of hospital with various illness, so the 6-year-old decided that she was going to become, in inverted commas, disabled herself. And she decided that she shut down shop. She was in year 1, and fortunately the young teacher had picked it up, and she just said no. And she actually said, I wanted to be disabled, so it was her scream out for some attention. And I went into work teaching one day, and everything was normal, and the principal said, oh, hi Robyn, how are you? And I lost it. So she sent me home, and thinking I'll be back the next day because I was running the department, I was on the finance committee, I was doing programs that were getting board approved, so I was doing everything you could think of, and I didn't go back. I took leave for 3 months. And that leave for 3 months, then at the end of that 3 months, I went, well, I can't do it anymore. No. So I took another 3 months leave without pay. And I had a total of 6 months off work. And in that time, I really looked carefully at what I wanted to do. So I went to a lot of career advisors, spoke to a lot of people. And when we sat down and just did, what do you like doing, what don't you like doing, at the very top of my list was I hated high school teaching. and really I got to the point where I was losing it with kids that I shouldn't be, kids who didn't need it, kids are doing it, and I have to get out of here before I do a disservice to these children.
You know what, Robyn? It's so true, because right from the beginning, you went into teaching from what you were telling me, and you realised that it wasn't actually the grand passion.
No, it wasn't.
But it was a job. It was a job, and it paid reasonably well, and that's what you did, and you didn't question it. And I think that's the same for so many of us when we first start our careers, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you've got a mortgage to pay, and in our case we had a mortgage plus huge medical bills to pay as well. So you go, how can I justify walking away from a job that you're getting paid for?
Yeah, it actually is so difficult as well because first of all you're in a role and you're doing it, but it's not what you really, really love. But okay, it helps to pay the bills. But then when you had to juggle family life as well, and then you had your 2 children and being in quite a challenging situation, but still working very hard and with your husband traveling so much, it must have been really hard to juggle because I was thinking as you were telling me, it's like she's like Superwoman. She can do everything, but something had to give at some stage, right?
Yeah, and that was my mental health basically had to give. And I think the fact at this particular age, I think it was even more home. It was probably unrealistic, but when my eldest daughter, Nicola, the one that's got the disability, was younger, even though I was teaching teenagers, you could say, well, they're so much older than her, so even though she's not doing anything, you could subconsciously disregard it. But because she was 15 and I was teaching 15-year-olds, it became obvious about the more things that she couldn't do and will never do, all those sort of issues. So I was constantly reminded every single day, every time I was in that classroom, how bad her disability was and how her life wouldn't be the same as everybody else. So she wouldn't be having the joys and tribulations of having boyfriends, the delight of going out or going on holidays and travelling without mum and dad, even moving out of home. She's 29 now and she still lives at home because there's nothing available for her out there. So all those things that she was never going to do was constantly in my face every single day. And then you'd see kids whose biggest problem was because mum and dad couldn't afford the latest piece of designer clothing, so they thought their life had ended. And that's where I lost it with the kids. I sort of went, you know what, you have no idea of what reality is, and it was time to get out. And so that's why I said then after 6 months of really looking at it, and when I looked at it, every single thing I loved to do was to create, whether it was with painting, whether it was with clothing, whether it was with interiors, etc. It was something that I really loved. It was all about design and creativity. So then it started the next thing about, well, what can I do to get that qualification? And as I was mentioning to you before, the trouble with the interior design industry is that anybody can call themselves an interior designer. And even though I taught design at school, I probably could have just set up an ABN and started, but I didn't want to. I actually wanted the qualifications. So I looked into where it was. And so the following year after that, I took extended leave again from work, extended it again for another 3 years, and I enrolled myself in a full-time interior design course to get my qualifications.
That was a brave move, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. A very brave move, one that had a huge impact on the family. Luckily, I had a husband who very much was behind me, though partway through the course, I think he was wondering why he had encouraged that, but he could see how unhappy I was, and I could see how the unhappiness was rolling over into the family life. So all the energy I'd use, all the humour I'd use with kids at school, so I used a lot of humour, do a lot of discipline and control, but instead of using that technique at home, I was yelling at my kids at home, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is not right. These are my kids, and I'm actually treating the students better than I am my own kids. So we just went, it's not happening, it's right. And fortunately, we're in a financial position that, yeah, it hurt and it did cost us a lot of money, but we were able to cope. So then so I enrolled 3 years in the full-time study.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, what a big career change and a very, very brave move for you. And I'm just thinking, how have you managed to juggle everything? Because with the emotional roller coaster that you must have gone through with your children as well, and, bless your little one who, just wanted all of that attention too. It's really quite hard for the young ones as well. But you've managed to keep it all together. How did you do it?
I think you just do it. Yeah, the old adage, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Very much Two, I think a couple of the students when I was studying, I think found me very frustrated because you'd be doing a lot of group activities, and if they said that you've got an hour, I'd say I'd have an hour to do something, and they would only give me, I'd have an hour, whereas they'd come and say, they'd speak for an hour and muck around, and it'd be like, no, I've got an hour, that's it. And we do it now in this particular time. And even though I wouldn't necessarily say I've got I seem to be able to manipulate my time and manage my time and do several things on the run and do it. But this course was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week type process. In fact, for my teaching degree, I had to do a thesis. And I can remember my mother coming down in my final year of the study for the interior design just to help me out for a few weeks while I did the final project and everything. And she said, Robyn, you didn't do this much work for a thesis. And I said, I know.
But it's probably because you finally found your true passion and direction, and you loved it so much, and you were determined to do a really good job. And, doesn't it make a difference when you find what you're passionate about? Very much so. I very, very much so. I did that. I found that I kept wanting to perfect it, whereas when I was at uni for the teaching degree, my husband used to get frustrated with me going, I think I might have got credits and a few distinctions, but no. He said, but you're doing this without any effort. You're just doing the bare minimum. And I go, yeah, whereas unless I got a distinction in the interior design, I wasn't happy with myself. And again, it's because of that passion. You actually found something you love to do. Yeah, and also once you find your passion, you want to be the best. You want to be the best. You want to get the high distinctions. You want to get the right marks. And then when you launch your business as well, and I'm having a look at your website, as we speak, it's beautiful. inspiredspaces.com.au. What a great website. If anyone hasn't been onto it, you better hop onto it as well, because it looks amazing. The work that Robyn does is just so beautiful. And so I want to find out a bit more about Inspired Spaces now. Tell me about your typical day as an interior designer.
There is actually no typical day. It varies and varies. The phone going in the background is just as likely to be a builder trying to ring me about an issue. So my biggest problem is actually at the moment finding time to actually be in the office to do the designing. So part of my job is obviously all mundane admin stuff that comes with it, but it's about meeting a client. You take a brief, you actually get to know them. And in fact, I might sound a little bit snoopy or a bit of a busybody, but unless I actually get right into how you use a space, whether it be residential or commercial, I really don't know what you need, and I can't do that. And it's got to the point where I've actually had clients where I've fed their dogs while they've been away on holidays, and they almost become like friends, and they go, oh, what are we going to do if we don't see you every week because of that? So it is all that really drilling down into the brief to really make sure that you're designing. Now, I actually don't have a design style per se, because I truly believe that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. Now, some designers have a very distinct style, and if that's what you want, they're out there, but my market is very much about the individual and about the fact that the space needs to reflect who you are. Now, one of my hardest jobs has been with a client that has an absolutely clean slate, a blank canvas. It was there to die for home. They've even put a lift in. I don't know if you know the architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, but he had this beautiful, beautiful building called Falling Water. It's my absolutely favourite piece of building architecture in the whole world. And this home, I call it his version of Falling Water, of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. It's sort of a little bit like this. And the only thing this client brought across were their clothes, nothing else. And that job has now been going for over 2 years, and I've still not, the client's happy to sign off on it, but I'm not, because I do not feel like it's complete. It's too much of a show home rather than, I suppose for me, it's more of a show house than a show home. It's not a home. I don't feel it reflects enough personality. It looks beautiful. The photos look beautiful, but it doesn't have them in it, and it's missing them. So to circumvent that, we've actually got a long hallway, and we're creating a timeline of photos of his family from his grandparents right to his current family, and we're doing that to actually put some personality into the space with that. So that's just a slightly going off on a tangent there. So part of it, I get all the brief, etc., do all the contracts, all the admin stuff, and then the process is on site, taking measurements, putting all the measurements into CAD, creating concepts for a space. So if I'm working especially with a commercial one, I'll look at the client's mission statement, who their target market is, who's actually visiting the site. Is it the client? Is it trades? Is it alliances? Who's actually visiting the site and using the space? I look at the company structure. So, for instance, you don't want your accounts sitting right next to your salespeople because they're going to be too noisy. How you use space, how you walk through the space, even to the point about, well, how do they use the photocopier? How do you use the fax machine, where the kitchen is located, that sort of thing, because it impacts on traffic flow, impacts on productivity. They even got studies to show that, for instance, if you want someone to be creative, you put them in a room with high ceilings and open space, so it frees their thought process. Whereas if you really need to concentrate and really buckle down, you lower the ceiling. So I use sort of all this sort of information
that's
and research.
interesting. Interesting. So higher spaces for creativity. If you want them to work and focus, then you have a little bit darker
detail.
room. How
and that's where,
is that?
So that can work well. Instead of having set office spaces within there, you can have hubs and different areas within the office that, people can move from one area to another. So if they need to be the brainstorming, the bigger feel, the bigger picture type ones, get into it in a more open space, etc., versus where I've got to really concentrate on the detail now and have that in a more confined space to do so. And also studies shown, for instance, if you look out onto a country image, whether it be a beach or some, a nice forest or in the bush or something, productivity increases as well as if they look onto a built environment.
What's so interesting? It makes me think of some of the offices that I've been into before, because there was one in MLC in North Sydney. I was doing some work in there when I was coaching, and they had, I can't remember, 5 or 6 floors, and each floor had a different theme. And there was the Zen level, and then there was the beach level where everything was blue, and blue for the sky and blue for the sea and yellow for the sand. And then they had a graffiti floor, which was really quite interesting. It was like a New York subway. And then they had the primary colors floor, where everything was really quite bright. And I was doing this workshop in a really brightly colored room, and it was like buzzing, and it was a bit too bright for me, but it certainly kept me awake. And now I realize I think it was an interior designer who must have thought, let's do this because it creates different atmosphere. So everything you're saying, it resonates now. It's all making sense. Robyn.
Well, you think about, they're actually shown, for instance, we all make the mistake, and I even did this for my first child before I really got into the interior design, was if you put a baby in a yellow bedroom, it will cry more than if it's in a blue or a green room.
Really?
And and they've even got studies to show that your blood pressure increases and your heart rate increases in a red room to do with energy, etc. So things like orange, for example, make people more talkative. Orange also increases your appetite. So you think about your McDonald's and all those, they've got the reds, the yellows, the oranges, all those colours going because they want you to eat more. So you do
That's
it.
Amazing. Sorry,
Go on,
can
sorry.
I just ask? No, it's just something that's very interesting. You were saying babies cry more in a yellow room.
Yep, definitely.
Ah, so what's a good colour for a baby to settle and sleep well in?
You go to your blues and your greens are good colours to do.
Blue and green.
And you've got to be careful too, because greens can have yellow undertones and you don't want the dominance of that. Even a cream coloured bedroom, which you'd think would be safe, still has a yellow undertone. So you still got to be careful with what you choose with those. So there's a lot to do there. I had one set of clients, because of my daughter's disability, she goes to a NALA, which is a Rudolf Steiner school. I mean, organisation, not school, wrong word. And they're very much into quite alternative, and they'd picked up this home that they'd converted it into a group home for a group of 4 men who all had autism. And when they had got the house, they'd been there for a few months, but the whole house had been painted yellow. And when I got there was furniture had to be nailed to the floor. There was no window treatments, nothing, because the clients would just go crazy in there. So we painted it all in blues and greens. Now there's window treatments back up. They're really calm. They have less behaviour issues, and it's all down to colour. It's really strong impact. So you match that with how you physically lay out a space, it can make a difference between that. So I say to clients, have you got a room in the house where everyone gravitates to, and then you've got another room that anyone never uses? And there's got to be a reason why. And it could be that you need to reorganise how the space is being used. It could be it's the wrong colour. It could be that the furniture layout's incorrect. So it's a number of all those sort of things that come into play, and people don't think about it.
Yeah, the colours actually do have a huge impact on how you feel as well. As I'm a qualified image consultant, and so I use colour quite a lot when it comes to what people should be wearing when they're trying to project a certain image, what colour tie men should put on if they're going to be making an important announcement or negotiating at a particular meeting, because it does influence the way you feel and how you perceive other people as well. But that's interesting about the orange and increasing your appetite, and McDonald's using those colours, and absolutely fascinating. You know, if anyone's going to be thinking about redoing their home environment or the office environment, Robyn, you're the one to come to for sure.
Very much. As I said, you can probably tell I'm very passionate about everything.
Comes through. Yes, it comes through, definitely. So tell me, as an interior designer, okay, if someone wanted to get into your line of work, what advice would you give them?
Okay, I make sure it's something that you really want to do, not because you see it on TV and you think, oh, that's going to be easy, because it's not. It's a lot of study. But what I suggest you do is start looking at the courses available. I strongly suggest, if possible, to move away from a correspondence course, because design is very much about a collaborative thing. I truly believe no one can claim a design is entirely theirs, because if a particular piece of material wasn't available or hadn't been invented by someone, would you have been able to create that end result if that hadn't been done? Or a conversation with one person may lead you on a tangent that you didn't even think about until they made a comment that sent you on a different way. So design is very much about collaboration, and it's about taking on comments and not losing anything. So that's why I don't think correspondence courses are the best for that reason. And sometimes you've got no choice. That's the only way you're going to fit it in. If that's the only way it's going to fit it in, I suggest you find yourself a mentor. Now, I did have one lady, I took her on for 3 months, where she only could do it by correspondence, but she also realised that she was missing out because she had no one to throw the ideas around. So she ended up doing some 3-month work placement with me, 1 to 2 days a week, so that she could actually do that. So that's another thing I would suggest, is that if you're not 100% sure, just see if you can do a little bit of work experience with someone, because it is a huge commitment in time and in money. Doing the course is very expensive because you actually have to produce a lot of stuff that takes a lot of artwork, a lot of models, etc. And it's certainly not a cheap course to be doing. Then I would look at what's available. And I always suggest to people, go for the highest qualification that you can afford or can get into. When I did my course, the Advanced Diploma of Interior Design was available except for one course at UTS. Now there are more degrees. So even the TAFEs are doing degree courses now, because I sat on the NMOR board when they actually got as the industry rep for when they got their degree through. So I'd suggest you very much do that. And you are going to have 3 years of a lot of work. Now, in the meantime, what you do need to be doing, because it's not a course that you just get in by your marks. And in fact, if you're a younger person trying to get in straight from school, don't be disillusioned, because they actually prefer mature age students over younger ones, because your life experiences have been limited. So with that limitation in your life experience, it reflects in your actual design work. And when I studied, I think there was 2 or 3 students had come straight from HSC, from school. And it was, to begin with, especially the first 18 months, they didn't have that maturity or life experience coming through in their design. So do that. But you need to start collecting a portfolio. And a portfolio, and this is where I went wrong as I was younger, I thought a portfolio had to be drawings and paintings, but it doesn't. A portfolio may be a composition of how you put some paperwork together, or even how you put your artwork on a wall is still a composition. And so I've learned that you may not be a brilliant drawer, but you still got the eye for composition. And a lot of interior design is about composition, about balance and getting things looking right in a room. So I have the ability to walk in and someone says, oh, it's not quite right. And I might just flip a couple of pieces of artwork around and move the lamp to a different spot. And they said, I can't believe it's the same spot, same room. It just feels so much different. And it's because of the ability to see a composition and to balance things out. So get yourself a portfolio of anything. It could be even a portfolio of cakes that you made for your kids. So I used to make my kids all these very intricate Disney characters as birthday cakes. Now, when I was going for applying to get into the course, I actually used that as part of my portfolio to show that I had the ability to think outside the square, because these cakes weren't cakes that you found in the Women's Weekly cake book for birthday cake book. It was, I'd taken it a step further and was creating all these characters. So those sort of things, even if you're into scrapbooking, if you're into photography, again, it's all about composition and looking at what it is. Now, that's really, really important that you have that portfolio to get in, because without that portfolio, you can't demonstrate this. So it doesn't matter that you may have all these high marks or whatever if you're younger. It's still not going to get you in it. And to be honest, really, it's hard work. But I work some days 7 days a week, or if my daughter's got a specialist appointment tomorrow, so I'll work tomorrow night to make up for the hours. However, I don't actually ever resent working because I love it so much.
Yeah, when you've found your true passion and direction and you're actually working the dream, it doesn't feel like work at all, does it?
No.
I have to admit, whenever anyone who's truly an entrepreneur and runs their own business and they really are doing it because they enjoy it, even if you're working till midnight, it doesn't feel like work because you're having fun. No. And if you're having fun, that's the most important thing. And, you know, as you've been telling me this, I've been flipping through all the photos of your kitchen renovations, because I'm going through kitchen renovation at the moment, and they look beautiful. What brilliant ideas you've got, Robyn. I've got to direct people to your website. It's inspiredspaces.com.au, and that's such a good name for a business as well, because honestly, looking at these pictures, they're inspired. It's quite amazing.
It took me a good 6 months to create that name. So I find it ironic that there's a lot of designers who just go by their surname, and you go, you're supposed to be creative, but you can't come up with a name that's creative.
Well, I suppose you could have been Hawke Inspired Hawke, or because your name is Robyn Hawke, or Hawke Interior Design, but that would be boring. Inspired Spaces sounds amazing. Now, I want to tell people where to find you, not only on your website, but you can be found on Instagram, and your Instagram account is at Inspired Spaces Oz, which is Inspired Spaces AUS, and on Inspired Spaces Oz, Robyn's got some of the most beautiful photos of, all of her work, and I think it's definitely well worthwhile having a look. And Robyn, now you were going to tell us a little bit about some special downloads that you've got on your website too. Tell us about those.
Okay, you can go onto the website, and basically on any page bar the home page, you'll find the opportunity to download some free template or checklist on how to employ the right interior designer. And that's important because it'll go back to the fact, for instance, I can draw up plans to DA approval. And it's because it's an unregulated industry, some other interior designers won't be able to do that. So it gives you a checklist to go through. That's a free one to tick across. And do your due diligence, people. Make sure that you check out their testimonials. Just don't read it on the website. Ring those people. Check out their qualifications, and most importantly, check out their insurances as well, to make sure that they've got professional indemnity as well as public liability. Because again, because it's an unregulated industry, you actually by law don't have to have it if you choose not to. So they're the sort of things that are really important to look at when you're doing an interior designer. And another one that's there is a do-it-yourself property styling. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of how important it is to style your home for sale, because first impressions are the most important. So I say to people, the first 30 seconds of bling. So when people pull up at the curb of your house, as soon as they see your house, they will make a decision about it. So if the first thing they see is a positive, they will spend the next 20 minutes touring the house looking for positives. If the very first thing they see is a negative, that's what they'll do. They will spend the next 20 minutes looking for all the negatives, either to negotiate the price down or to talk themselves out of that sale. So the DIY one is for the people who basically have the furniture but don't know what to do, how to set it up, how to take advantage. So this is the one, and they tend to be probably, it's for the higher end market, but it's also probably a little bit more for the lower end market, where if you hire furniture, there is a minimum period of usually 1 month hire. So if you sell it in the first week, you still have to hire it out, the furniture. So mine's not about hiring furniture, it's about using what you've existing got there. And there's a report, tells you what to do. There's also a small video of a client of what we walk through what we did with their existing things and how we sold that house in one day, open day, at $100,000 over the original asking price.
How
by
fantastic.
Just following that.
Fantastic, Robyn.
And also coming in the next few weeks is a template that I have designed that I've been using for several years now, and I've decided to put up as a resource so that you compare apples with apples. So it's a template that color codes each of your contractors' quotes so that it can actually tell you or gives you the questions to ask, to say to this particular builder, okay, your price is $10,000 less, but does this include this and this and this in your quote? If it doesn't, well, can you please include it? Or if it does, can you then please put that in your actual contract so that we know we're doing it? It's even got automatically says some builders will add GST to your price and some don't. So that's important. Another thing too. So if they haven't add GST to it, the template will automatically add it so that you know the pricing. So that's another one that's coming. And
Wonderful.
and something that's also coming in the next month or so is what interior design style am I? So just a quick quiz on trying to sort of, people go, oh, I really don't know what I like. But once you actually start sitting down with them, they do know what they like, but they just don't know how to put a name to it. So they'll be coming through as well.
There's going to be so much valuable information to download free from your website, and then also to get to know you a lot more too. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Robyn. You really are, to me, superwoman. It's amazing everything that you juggle in your personal life and everything that you've gone through with the challenges personally before you found your true direction in your career. And now, how lucky are we to have you as an interior designer on our side? So,
Thank you for that.
I'm just loving your website. Honestly, everyone, hop on to inspiredspaces.com.au because you're in for a treat. It's really great. And I must say thank you so much, Robyn. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a book coming out soon written by you, because if so, I'll be one of the first. I'll be one of the first to buy it. So
it's on the to-do list, I'm afraid. Yes.
Well, you're such a busy woman.
Just finding the I have to put a few more extra hours in a day to do it, but that's the goal of as the business expands, having time to do that so the staff can do the other things and I can be doing the things I love.
Yeah, well, the trick is 1,000 words a day. That's what I did when I wrote my book. 1,000 words a day, not negotiable. Doesn't matter what time of day or night it is, you get 1,000 words out there, and once you've broken the camel's back, you've got about 30,000 words, then you just want to keep writing and finishing it. So good luck, and when you've written your book and it's published, we have you back on the show and we'll talk about the book and everything that's going to teach us as well. So thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure having you on the show, Robyn.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed myself. If I've got to talk about interior design, it's obvious. I don't shut up.
But it's a delight. But it's a delight. It's when you're really following a career that is one that inspires you and you love it so much, then it just makes me happy as a career coach. It's great. And thank you for sharing all of those tips so people know what they need to do if they're thinking about becoming an interior designer too.
Okay,
so we'll talk to you again soon. Bye, Robyn.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.